Okay, so we put our front tubes in and we got them tack welded. I guess I should pull a hard top and show you guys how that turned out, but you can hardly see it because whatever. But we got those tacked. They're tacked to the floor plates as well. Looking good. And then per our list, we just decided to skip the last few steps. Yeah, all this, we're like, we'll do that later. I got some mixed thoughts. So we're gonna jump to this one, the windshield bar. This shouldn't be too hard. So let me show you. What I did was I just took a piece of wood and just cut it to length, and it basically is friction holding itself in place right now. So as we can tell, you could potentially make this a 3D tube. If we don't, it's going to be hanging pretty low. So I'll try to back up and show you. Like, this is how, I mean, you could do that, but I'm not going to, because that would be too easy and simple and, you know, all those kind of terrible things. So we're going to do a 3D bend for this one. So what I did, I got this wood piece is pretty straight. It's not perfect, it's close. Now there's some marks on it every 3 inches. So you can see these little dashes. Maybe you can see them. Anyway, there's little marks every 3 inches. That's the center of it right there. Sorry, the focus sucks. But we did that, and then I just took a ruler and measured up to the sheet metal. So you can see here, at our first mark, it was 2 inches, 2.5, gets up to a little over 3 inches. And it's a mirror image on the other side. Pretty simple. The wood dowel is a 1/2 inch, so we got to add a 1/4 inch to our measurements. And so far, that's all I got. But what I'm about to do is I'm going to go into CAD, and I know the distance end to end is like 38.75, I think, whatever it was. So I'm just going to take that those dimensions and build, you know, a tube that would kind of follow the roof if it had that profile, and take a look at that, and then see how like complex it would have to be and whatever. So we're going to go look at that. I don't know how many bends or whatever we're going to do. I got to think about it. But before I figured that out, I wanted to measure and see how much it really was. And putting a wooden piece in here, the cool thing about that is it gives you a nice visual of what it would look like if you just left it alone. So here's like a good view you can really see, you know. You could do it, but it'd be very visible through the windshield. Now, my position in the car, the seat's so low that really wouldn't obstruct my vision very much to do that. So you could kind of cheat and just throw a straight tube. And we haven't ruled it out completely, like maybe we will. But my curiosity was how much work would it be to do, because how much work would it be to do a 3D tube, and could it look good? And then of course, I guess the other important part would be ease of manufacturing. This should be able to be on a 2D plane. I shouldn't have to do 3D. So that greatly simplifies the math and all that stuff. So it's actually not that hard to make something in 2D. So basically we're gonna throw a little bit of effort and see what that would take, what it would look like, and go from there. We got plenty of tubes, so if we did a 3D one and didn't like it or whatever, we could always just do a straight one. So like I said, with minimal effort, we took a few measurements. We're gonna go throw this in CAD, come up with a design, and go from there. Okay, so I'll try to keep this brief, but we took those measurements earlier for the windshield bar, and so I just put these dots in here. That's what this top piece is, these little dots, and I just drew a straight line. And then I did an offset, which was the radius of the pipe. So basically, if if this was the center line of the pipe, then it would basically be bumping into these points. And then I drew a shape below that, which is representative of the center line of a tube, to try to keep it close. So we can see this is like a mirror. So basically this would extend, this is like the left side of it, and then the right side would just be the same. So what you'll notice is these dots represent, like I said, as close as you can get before the tubes are going to hit. So if I zoom in, I put an 1/8 inch gap there where it's going to get the closest, and then right here we're at 2.8. I might adjust that a little. That's a little tight. That's not quite 1/8 because that's in metric. But basically that's what we're doing, is we're trying to figure out what bends and lengths. That way this tube fits, basically it'll be within a 1/4 inch or so. Like over here, this distance is a 1/4 inch. And then we can see it just gets tighter to 1/8, and then it opens up. Whatever that is less than a 1/4. And then the only spot that has more is right here, but this swings up and gets close pretty quick. And we did put a 2-inch straight section here. So anyway, that's how we're doing this. I'm gonna fine tune it because I want this number to be 1/8 of an inch, which means I'm gonna have to shorten that a little or do something. But we'll make that change and then we'll get back to, or I may just leave it. But I think we're gonna cut this out of cardboard. It wouldn't be that hard to just measure this up and make a cardboard template. So I think I'm gonna do that and then just stick it in the car and make sure it actually fits. And if it does, then I'll bend it up in a tube. Okay, so this windshield bar, we did our modeling and we made a paper template and stuck it in the car to see how this would fit. And it looks like it, let me turn the light on. It looks like it pretty much agrees with the model. So you can kind of see, you know, it angles up, gets pretty close, gets a little gap in the middle, does the same thing this way. It's a little bit low right there. These bars are, I guess, slightly, that other side seems to be slightly higher. I think that's why. So a little bit more of a gap there than you saw over here, but I think that tube's just a little bit higher right there. Essentially the floor, that piece there, if I were to go grind on it a little more, this whole tube would drop and then they'd be equal. So I might do that, we'll see. That's not much. But anyway, it basically seems to have worked. That profile is really close to touching, but it doesn't, you know, it has a very little clearance. We decided it would have an 1/8 inch. It pretty much has about that. So the good news, so what I think I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and build this tube. And then, like I said, if it's touching, that foot thing there needs to be ground a little anyway. So all I gotta do is cut a couple of tack welds, grind it a little. That'll drop that down some, which will help my clearance. So we can do that if we need to. But I think this is gonna be worth doing, because if you get up in here, you can see that profile of that tube. Don't look at the bottom of the white part. That's the bottom of it is actually where the center line of the tube would be if I did a straight one. So you have to look at that top profile. That would be the top of the tube, obviously. So you can tell that from a windshield standpoint, looking through the windshield, that tube would be a lot higher. So that's kind of what I was shooting for. So I think we're gonna try it. Looks like we got our math fine, so we'll build this up and see what happens. Well, check this out. Halo bar, or windshield, upper windshield bar, whatever you call it. So this sucker is in there tight, and it looks pretty badass. Look at this. This is like up in the corner. It's hardly blocking any of the windshield. I got it super high up, kind of right there where the hardtop meets. The only major, there's two problems. One is I bought the latches for the hardtop won't fit. I already knew that. So I bought the delete or brackets that are like low profile. I don't think those are going to work either, because the holes are basically way over there. So I'll probably have to build new brackets. But even if I did, I don't think you can get to these bolts anymore. I can get to that one. That second one there is going to be pretty questionable. So what we may have to do is just build a bracket that hooks to the cage. So probably just do that. That's a problem for future Pat. But yeah, it's pretty good. So the second problem is the one that we kind of predicted. We kind of got lucky, or I don't know. I thought I screwed this tube up, and apparently we didn't. It actually turned out pretty much how I thought. So the goal was, if you guys remember, was to have a 1/4 inch gap here. It tapers to about 1/8 of an inch. Then it opens up a little, goes back to 1/8, and then it angles down and hits the tube. It pretty much did that exactly, except for over here. We're hitting the car. But we actually predicted that because we only had 1/8 inch of clearance, and we knew that this tube over here was a touch high. So we said that if this happened, which we expected it to happen, we would just cut the bottom of that tube a little shorter, and this whole section will drop down, and it'll basically fix that. That's basically the plan. So we need this to drop 1/8. This is kind of like a lever arm. So for that to drop 1/8, we're going to have to grind probably 3/16, maybe 1/4 off of the bottom of that. But that'll pretty much get us to where these two are equal, which is probably how it should be anyway. That was just, we basically messed that one up and ground the bottom to fix it, and then it worked, and we ended up not having to remake it. But we didn't do that over here, so this one was a touch higher. So no big deal. The only downside is I got to take all this shit back apart to do that, but I can do it. And then that'll drop, and then this will be perfectly symmetric. And like you can see, there's a tiny bit of clearance here, so we are good. This worked out. This engineering on this pretty much bang on. But I tell you what, the coolest part is the fitment. So this is looking like, you know, level on the car. So this is like the center of the windshield, and it's just completely out of the way. You know, so very happy with how that turned out. It's basically as high as it's pretty much the exact same height as the rear hoop. So from a safety standpoint, I definitely like that. So all good. Fitment's pretty good. The tubes are tight, or tight enough. Oh. Here's the tubes hitting the thing. Plenty good enough. All good there. Yeah, here's that interior view. This is like looking in the door. So yeah, if you just look at it square on, you can't even see it. It's so tucked up there. So very nice. Super happy. All right, so I'm gonna think about what to do next, but I don't know if that's gonna be the next step, but we do gotta pull that and cut it like we said. But it looks like I don't have to remake this tube, which is awesome, because this thing was a bit of a headache to pull this off, but luckily we got it the first try. So I guess all the math is paying off. So anyway, kind of excited about that, but go look at our list, see what we're going to do next.